start recording and share us live on Facebook.
Okay.
We can get that done.
Okay. Let's try to log in and share as well. Okay, and it's just about time to start. We're so glad I can see people logging in now. Okay, well, it's 5:30 according to my computer, so we'll go ahead and get started. Good evening, everyone. I am Tracy Irby. I'm the director at TWU, Center for Women Entrepreneurs. And we have Donna-Lisa Stinyard with us tonight, our program coordinator. And she's going to be the one who'll be taking your questions tonight. So for those of you that are new, the Center for Women Entrepreneurs is part of the Jane Nelson Institute for Women's Leadership. The JNIWL is dedicated to preparing women to take on successful roles in business and public service to ensure women have the education to establish careers as successful C-suite executives, the skills for building entrepreneurial businesses, and the framework needed to run for public office. And our center helps women through funding, you grant winners, small business advising, networking, and training events. We also help support research into women's issues. So we'll go ahead and get started. We'll have let our grant winners introduce themselves and their business. I know there were a few that couldn't be here tonight. So we're going to start with you, Deborah Doty.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. I get to do the honors. So about a year ago, Kelly and I partnered and decided to open an online shop for cards and fine art prints. And all of our products are based on original artworks by Kelly and myself. And we also are going to have a line of educational poster and artwork. And our plan is just to bring a little joy to people in these troubled times through our cards and posters.
That's great. Great. We look forward to seeing those. I love the artwork I've seen already.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, next is Marquita Samuel.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Marquita Samuel. Thank you again for the opportunity to be here. The company I share with the other grant awardee, Lisa Alexander, is called Digital Business Assets, and we provide women entrepreneurs customizable templates for their everyday business needs. So proposals, ebooks, webinars, social media, templates that you can customize and put your logo on and your colors and of course the information to make your business stand out. So that's what we provide women entrepreneurs.
Great. So happy to have you here tonight. Kendra Outlaw, you're next.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kendra Outlaw, and I am the owner of Atmospheric Home Staging. We are a Dallas, Texas-based home staging company focusing on vacant home staging. So we work with real estate investors, homeowners, sellers to prepare their homes for the real estate market.
Great, thank you. Jamita?
Yes, good evening, everyone. My name is Jamita Machin, the CEO of the Software Vault. We're a technology consulting firm in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And we bring startups their technology idea from an idea to reality. So we produce, we consult with them to put their product to the market and in front of investors.
Great, thank you. Jamila?
Hi, my name is Jamila James, and the name of my company is Antega LLC, and we help businesses transform numbers into stories. And we do that in several ways. The first being we offer part-time finance and accounting services to businesses that need these services but can't afford to pay someone full-time. And then we also do some technology consulting for companies that are growing and need data infrastructure and all of that other stuff. So really just touching the company's data from beginning to end.
Great, thank you. We're so glad you're here. Let me see, I'm not sure if I saw her name. Felicia, are you here? No, I didn't think I saw her. Okay, that's everyone for this evening, and we welcome everybody else that's here tonight. Now we'll need to get ready for our speaker. I am so happy she is here tonight. Your list. There we go, Amy. I got it. Okay, tonight is Insurance for Small Business. How daring are you? And we have Amy Doze with us. Amy is a property and casualty insurance agent and risk management advisor with more than 14 years professional insurance experience. Having worked for 10 years as a senior underwriter for Chubb Insurance, Amy has a unique perspective to negotiate on behalf of her clients and create risk management and insurance programs to protect a company's bottom line, employees, customers, vendor relationships, and investors. She specializes in many industries, including technology, manufacturing, nonprofit, construction, and education. Amy is a graduate of the McCombs School of Business at the University of Texas at Austin. She is an ordained Presbyterian elder, a volunteer Tarrant County voter registrar, supporter of many homeless outreach organizations, and proud mom to 3 busy kiddos. So Amy, welcome. We're so glad to have you here this evening.
Oh, thank you for that. I'm glad to be here. I hope everybody is doing well. Let me see if I can share my screen here.
And while you're doing that, just a reminder to everybody, you can send a private message to Donalisa Stinyard if you have any questions, and we'll do those at the end.
Yeah, happy to answer any questions. I do get that it is Thanksgiving week. It's Tuesday night, and we are here talking about insurance. So I promise, Tracy, I will be as light as I can. It's very high overview of insurance, everybody's favorite subject, I know. And we'll be really quick. I mean, you all will have my contact information. You can call me at any time if you have questions about your current business or how best to insure it. I'm happy to be of service in that way. But this is really just high level. I've tried to make it really fun and a little bit funny because that's just the only way I know how to do things. I can't make it too boring. So let's jump in. Okay, is everybody with me? And I put this quote up from Breanne Brown. If y'all don't know her, love her. She's just really positive and talks a lot about daring and daring women. And I think anybody on this call who is a business owner and you've taken it this far, that you understand what it means to dare greatly and be brave, but also a little bit scared at the same time. I think everybody would understand and relate to that. So we're going to talk a lot about that tonight. Insurance for small business, we're going to, like I said, quickly, high level, cover these 4 things: risk management, like the total basics of small business insurance, common types of insurance, and then what I'm going to talk about is a risk profile, which is really important for any business. So what is risk? I keep using that word because when you talk about insurance, the word risk comes up quite a bit. And really all that risk is exposure to danger or harm. And of course, we're going to be talking about that from a business standpoint. And what possibly could be a risk for your small business? What could be an exposure your business has to danger or harm? And this is my first fun picture of a very crowded swimming pool. And over COVID, somebody came up with what they thought was a really smart idea to create an app, and it's called Swimply. And you can rent your pool out. So if I had a beautiful pool, which I wish I did, I could rent my pool out by the hour and have people sign up to come use my pool and make some extra money. And this sounds like a really great idea until somebody gets really, really hurt. And then I turn it into my homeowners who say, oh, you're operating a business out of your home. you have no coverage for that whatsoever. So really, really interesting concept, but not a great business plan if you consider your total loss, your exposure to this risk was really your investment to go into the app, any property damage that you might have in your backyard because folks are partying it out in your swimming pool while you're not home, and of course lawsuits. I mean, the potential for risk for anything with a swimming pool is pretty easy to imagine. So just an idea when we talk about exposure to loss, it's much more than just the investment that you've made in your business. So biggest threats to any business, small, medium, or large, really can be broken down into these 5 categories. Of course, we've got natural disasters. We've seen a lot of that this year with flooding and fires in California, a lot of natural disasters, tornadoes. Technology and cyber crimes, we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight because that's really a growing threat to businesses today. Companies that have been hacked, have had data stolen. It's a major concern. We have man-made threats to business. This can be rioting. Let's see, I've got some other examples of that somewhere around here. Anything that could possibly be made by man could be a threat to your business. The pandemic, our latest exposure, which affects businesses in so many different ways, is another thing to talk about. And then social engineering. This is really just the reality that we live in today, that there are so many lawsuits. And because of that, it's a threat to your business that somebody who might not have sued you 20 years ago is going to think that you've got some deep pockets now that you're, you've got this business. And unfortunately, it does happen. And so social engineering is just our society engineering new threats to businesses and attorneys coming up with new ways to make money and hurt your business. So just kind of something to think about. And of course, in insurance, we think of worst case scenarios. That's what we do for a living. So we see quite a bit of these things. Unfortunately, most small businesses are not prepared for a disaster. And according to SCORE, which is a nonprofit group that you all might work with, I don't know, they help lots of small businesses. They estimate that 40% of businesses that have some kind of disaster don't make it. Like most of them are out of business within 1 year, and 60% are out of business within 5 years. So it's really significant and important to be prepared and have the right insurance in place. So when disaster strikes, you don't miss a beat. So we talk in insurance about risk management and having what we call a preparedness plan or a crisis management plan. And you want to first identify, what could be a problem. So for instance, if I have an in-store boutique, one of the big exposures that I'm going to have is from theft, either from employees or from customers. So I've identified that as something that is a potential problem for me. So the next thing I want to do is protect my business. So that probably means doing background checks on anybody that I hire and maybe putting up video cameras. You want to test and detect that, just constantly be monitoring it. Is this working for me? And evaluating it. Do I need to do anything else? Do I need to have inventory controls in place? What else do I possibly need to do to get this exposure under control? And so you'd want to do that really for any kind of risk that we talked about that you might see for your business, to really come up with a written plan as to how you're going to minimize that potential problem for your company. This is an example of a crisis management plan, and I have a template. Somebody mentioned templates. You're welcome to this. Anybody is, where you can actually go through as a company, and it'll kind of help you identify those exposures, those risks, and walk you through what might help to minimize that. So this is just the very beginning. It's several pages, but I have a download of that. I'm happy to email to anybody if you would like a copy. So back to that daring thing and risk management and how much you're willing to take on. There are 4 types of risk management. Risk avoidance. That might be, I'm not going to have a boutique after all. I don't want anybody coming in. I don't want to deal with the public. I don't want to have employees. I'm going to do everything online. So I've avoided that risk of theft. It might be mitigation and prevention, trying to minimize it. It might be risk retention. I'm going to have a boutique and I'm going to hire a bunch of people and have the public in and out, and I've got a lot of money. So if something happens, I'll pay for it out of pocket. That's logical. Or the pretty one there is risk transfer, and that's where, of course, insurance comes into play, where you're actually transferring the risk that you have internally from a business onto an insurance company. So insurance, everybody's favorite for a Tuesday night. What is it? It is a promise. It's actually it's a contract. It's a guarantee that if I'm the insurance company, I'm going to pay for what claims you have if you pay me a premium. If you give me money, I will then in turn take care of you. So something to often remember is that in liability, on a liability policy, it often includes defense dollars. So if you are sued, there's money in there in the pot for attorney fees, and that adds up very quickly. What insurance is not, just a reminder, I'm sure everybody knows this. It's not a maintenance contract. It does not cover all scenarios. There are exclusions in insurance policies, and not all of them are created equal. There's not going to be coverage for fraud, for instance. And there's often not coverage for past work or past claims, past lawsuits. It's not a way to make money. Again, it goes back to that promise of restoration. So if something happens, an insurance company is to try to get you back to the level that you were before you had that loss. Not to be better off than the loss, but just to exactly where you were prior to having the loss.
Bank of America, right?
Great. Sorry. Oh, maybe I missed it. Anyway, throw it in the chat. And it's also not protection for just crazy events like tornadoes and cyber losses. It's also coverage for things like frozen water pipes and slips and falls. So you want to keep in mind that there are, important coverages that you'll actually one day probably need. In fact, I think I had a good statistic on that. No, maybe we'll get to that in a minute. Bear with me. Let's see. Oh, I thought you all might enjoy this, because you can actually purchase insurance for anything. I mean, really just about anything. You can see Tom Jones has insured his chest hair. At one point, Tom Jones had his chest hair insured for $7 million. So he just felt like this was so important for his career that he had this, what he thinks is amazing chest hair. And if something happened to it, his career would be over. And if the chest hair were to have a problem, he could be getting as much as $7 million. So anyway, fascinating to me. Heidi Klum, who is a Victoria's Secret supermodel, has each leg insured. The left leg is worth $1.2 million, but the right leg is only worth $1 million because she cut it on a piece of glass. So that's all that she wanted to get on that one leg. America Ferrera is the new face of Aquafresh toothpaste. And when Aquafresh started working with her, they felt like her smile was so important to the branding that Aquafresh took out an insurance policy on her smile for $10 million. And then lastly, David Beckham, his family has a policy for him for $151 million. So if he is somehow injured and cannot work anymore, his family could get up to $151 million. So just, oh, and the aliens, I almost forgot the aliens. That's my favorite one on here. That last year, 20,000 Americans purchased a policy that if they were abducted by aliens, their family would be compensated for that. So anything in insurance. So don't let anybody ever tell you insurance is boring. You can see some pretty wild stuff. I'd love to work on any of those accounts, by the way. Why do you need it? Obviously, we live in a litigious society because we are in America, and unfortunately, there are just a lot of lawsuits. Insurance helps you minimize your financial risk. You have worked so hard, don't lose it all now. Oftentimes, you'll have contracts with your lease, maybe your vendors or your lenders who are going to require you to have insurance, and they're probably going to require you to have certain things in your insurance and certain limits of insurance. So that means, yeah, you've got to go buy it. In some states, it is compulsory, like commercial auto. It is required that you purchase that in Texas if you have a commercial auto in your company's name. Mentioned this earlier with the Swim app. Most businesses are not covered under your home owner's policy. So if you are operating out of your home, it's always a good idea to have a separate business insurance policy for many reasons, mostly because it's going to guarantee you the coverage in your business's name, and it's going to separate out your personal assets. It's going to protect your personal assets, separating those from your business assets, which is always really recommended. And I think for peace of mind, back to that risk and anxiety and being brave but scared. I mean, for me, I have a little peace of mind that I don't have my own business, but if something happens to my home, hopefully my homeowner's insurance is gonna kick in and my family is not gonna be too hard off. So it does give you some peace of mind, I think, to have insurance in place that you've got some protection for your business. Oh, and then part of running a business is sheltering that business from harm and liability. It's just kind of your fiduciary responsibility to protect your assets in your business. We're going to quickly, don't worry, do not get overwhelmed. We're going to quickly go through all these different types of business insurance. All of them are important. 75% of small businesses are underinsured by 40% or more. And what that really means is that for the majority, well, for 40%, a lot of businesses, if something happens, then they're going to be paying out of pocket if a disaster occurs. So it's a significant problem in America that companies are not insured enough, and that they do have problems and go out of business often if there is a disaster. So I love The Office, the TV show. I'm still not over it that it's ended. So the next, you'll maybe recognize some folks in the next few slides. This is actually the office set. Excited to find this slide. Property insurance is super important. If you own a building or you're operating, in a building, that would be covered under property. Any kind of business contents that you might have, all the desks, the computers, books, inventory that you might be keeping, you'd want to cover that under a property policy. Any property of others, if you're doing any kind of, for instance, repair work, and you have property of somebody else coming into your office, you would want to make sure you account for that. Any property that you have off-site, maybe you've moved some of your inventory or your product to a storage site. You want to make sure you have proper insurance for that. You can cover it under a business policy. Electronic equipment and software should be included under this policy. Anything you might be shipping. And then what we call loss of business income or business interruption, which is a really important part of a property policy. And what that means is if something happens to the premises and it's a covered loss, like if there's a fire or a tornado and the business is kaput, and it's might take you 6 months to get up and running, what business income insurance does is it provides for your operating expenses and your net income during that time that you're not working. So it's really nice insurance to have. Something to think about on property insurance is deductibles. We are seeing increases in deductibles lately, especially with wind and hail. Those are often 2% is now the norm, which it wasn't 2 years ago. That's a lot of deductible for folks. If you look at the limits on the policy, 2% can be quite a bit. There are options there, but just something to be aware of. And when I made a note about flood, that's often not included. You'll need a separate policy for flood insurance. So that's property. Excuse me, your liability is for third-party claims. So your product, is it going to cause bodily injury or property damage to somebody else? Are they going to get injured? Is something going to get injured and I'm going to somehow get sued? That's what liability insurance covers. It also covers premises liability. So if somebody is on your site, even in your home, maybe coming to pick something up, or if you have an actual commercial space that you use and somebody slips and falls, you've got premises liability coverage if you have general liability insurance. Advertising injury and personal injury, this actually does occur quite a bit in small business. And what this covers are things like libel, slander, and copyright that you might accidentally, of course, do in your advertising. And the biggest one is, I guess the biggest advice I can give you on that is just don't say anything ugly about your competitors, or don't, even bounce around the bush, or whatever they say. Don't say anything about your competitors at all, because it can come back to really harm you, and those can be really expensive claims. I mentioned defense costs earlier, and the majority of liability policies, you have maybe a 1 million or 2 million limit, but defense costs are actually outside of that limit. And again, that can get really expensive, so it's nice to have insurance that covers that. I was excited to hear about several of the businesses that you all have started, and they're all super impressive. And many of them, you mentioned consulting or design work or template work or making cards. A lot of those things will probably not cause bodily injury or property damage. So you have a really low exposure, I would guess, on a product's liability, but you have what's called financial injury exposure. So if you have a contract with somebody and you don't pull your end of the contract and your client has a financial loss, and it's because you did not do professionally what you said you were going to do, then that is why you would need professional liability coverage. Just another type of liability coverage that's available, especially for technology companies. Can't stress that enough. Automobile insurance. This one I think everybody can relate to because most of us have it for personal autos, but anything you own, rent, lease, or borrow. If owning it in the company's name, it's got to be in the company's name, then you would cover it under a commercial auto policy. The thing to really think about here, and you don't want to overlook, is a really important endorsement you would put on an auto policy. It's called non-owned. So if you have any employees or partners that might run an errand for your business, might be running to the bank, might run a quick delivery, anything like that, it's on, the company's asked the employee to do, you want to make sure you have this endorsement on there, because auto losses are really big losses. And if they're doing it for the company, then it's going to come back to what the company's going to want to pay for that. Love this slide of Andy on the desk, because workers' comp is something that you actually don't have to purchase in the state of Texas. It's not mandatory, but most people do. It's actually a very affordable coverage. It's based on payroll, and it is an audited coverage. So you kind of come up with the payroll that you expect to have for the year. And at the end of the year, the insurance company will come back to you and say, you actually hired a lot more people, you owe us more money, or I'm sorry you had to lay off some folks, we're going to give you back some money. So it's audited. What workers' comp does in Texas is it's wage replacement and medical care costs for injuries that might occur on the job. So if somebody's hurt, one of your employees, they're going to want to file workers' comp insurance. They might be out of work for a couple of weeks. They're going to want their wages still. That's where workers' comp comes in. Really important not to forget family. I work with several small businesses that really push back on work comp because they'll say, well, it's just family. It's all family, so we're not worried about it. But we've seen that go south a lot when you're intermixing your family with your business, and it can cause a lot of stress on both sides. A family is invested in the business, and now somebody's hurt on the job. They want to have carpal tunnel surgery, or they've done something that you would never have guessed that they would have done, or the worst, and the most common is the auto accident. It happens. And then you've got somebody injured and an automobile. You've got an automobile property claim and a workers' comp injury. It gets really messy sometimes with family when we think it never, ever could, but I really encourage family-owned businesses to consider workers' comp. Again, it's very affordable. You could get a quote and probably be surprised at what it is. An umbrella policy is a policy that sits on top of your general liability, your auto, and part of your workers' comp. It just gives you extra limits of insurance. And umbrellas for most industries are also very affordable. And some families even carry umbrellas if they have swimming pools, even if they're not renting them out on the app. But this really helps you if there is some massive lawsuit and a jury decides that you just got to be punished and you don't have the limits in your general liability policy. But thank goodness you got an umbrella policy. And so now that policy is going to pay on top of it. I told you I'd be fast on these. Y'all didn't believe me. Here we go. Cyber liability. Very, very unhappy face there, because cyber is really ugly and it's really common. We really only sold it to technology companies a few years ago, and now I encourage construction companies to get. I mean, every type of industry we work with has got to have a cyber liability policy. If you have a website, if you're on social media, you need it. If you have any kind of private information from your employees on your servers, or even in a cloud, you really need to consider cyber liability insurance. So if the company's hit with a virus or a data breach, and I mean, that can happen in so many different ways. What happens is you have what's called first-party expenses and third-party expenses. So first-party expenses, this can be things like restoring your software, insurance companies pay extortion fees, and that happens a lot. A pirate will come in through your email and hold all your information captive and say, you've got to pay us $50,000 right now, or we're going to release all this private data, and they will do it. And believe it or not, these hackers have call centers, and insurance companies know how to negotiate with them. It's unbelievable. It's truly unbelievable. And they will actually pay extortion fees to get that information released. It can include notification expenses. So if you have your customer credit card data released to the public, it costs about $250. I think it's $250 a year per person. So that can add up pretty quickly because you want to monitor their credit and notify them that they have this potential privacy exposure. But the credit monitoring piece can be really expensive. And then third-party expenses, if you actually have a privacy breach and my information has somehow been released from your server, I'm not going to be very happy about that. And so you need to be prepared for the cost associated with that. And then any kind of media liability and public relations costs that might come with that. Cyber liability policies are also pretty affordable. I'm working with a small business right now that wanted $1 million in limit. I think their premium came in about $1,100 for the year. So for them, it was worth it to have it because they really do have quite a bit of employee private information and client credit card information that they wanted to make sure that they had secured. But you can see he's not a good thing if that happens. Management liability. This is a package policy where you can kind of pick and choose different coverages. I tried to pick out the ones I thought might be interesting for you all to know about. Employment practices liability. This is a really big one. If you have any kind of group of employees, things to think about. If you are alleged to be discriminatory in any way, and there are protected classes as they should be, but oftentimes businesses forget that. So discrimination, sexual harassment, wrongful termination, and invasion of privacy are just a few. We have seen since the Me Too movement, there have been a lot more claims popping up for employment practices liability. Directors and officers is something else to think about. If you have family assets in your business and family partners, really want to think about directors and officers insurance. There's often conflicts of interest with people, and it can unfortunately go south. And if you have a directors and officers policy, it can offer some protection if it does go south. And then of course a crime policy is if your employees or somebody in your company is actually found to be stealing assets or financial monies from your company. A crime policy would cover insurance for that. Key man life is one of my favorite things to talk to companies about, especially small companies that might not have really thought about their succession plan. And especially if you're in a partnership where, what happens if one partner dies? What is our plan? Is that person's spouse then going to come in? Do we not want that spouse to come in? I mean, it's just something to really consider, especially if you have any kind of family assets in your business. And if there's somebody, it also covers if somebody's really important in the business, like your CFO, if that person or your top salesperson who might be the only salesperson, I don't know, and amazing, and you have to replace them because they've become injured or died, then what do you do? So a key man life insurance policy is different than a life insurance policy that we would purchase, because on key man, it's actually purchased by the company, and the company purchases it. The company pays the premium on it, and the company is the beneficiary of it. So if Michael Scott is injured and leaves the company and the office can no longer run, the company's going to get some money, and so there's business as usual. They're not going to miss a beat, and they're going to have some time to get on their feet and hire somebody to replace the world's best boss. There's several ways to purchase insurance. I mean, you can go online and there are some like automatic coverage grants that you can get, but I think there are some real reasons to work with an insurance agent. We don't pay insurance agents a fee. You would never do that. I'm paid by an insurance company. So my job is to work on your behalf, to work with several insurance companies to figure out what the best thing in the market is for your company. What else I really enjoy doing is developing a risk profile for a company. So my job is to tell your story to the underwriters of the insurance company to get you the best coverage for the best price. So I talk a lot about risk profile, and that really just means going back to that crisis management, that you've put in place formal procedures. You've got a plan for everything. You've thought of all the what ifs. And because of that, you haven't had any claims, or maybe you've done all those things, but you've had a claim, but it's okay because you have insurance, and that's what insurance does, is face claims. But we develop what's called a risk profile and go through all the different things that might be an exposure or risk for your company and try to minimize them as best we can so that when an underwriter is considering writing your insurance, that they're going to give you the best deal. Agents can help you evaluate your needs and say, you really might not need key man life, or a $1 million umbrella might be enough, or no umbrella. A good agent will really work with you and not try to sell you every policy, but really work with you on what your needs are now. Get that in place, and as your business grows, you can grow your policies and always add on to. Claims handling is always nice to have with an insurance agency. I sit in downtown Fort Worth. We have a claims department. We're not an insurance company, we're an agency, but our claims people know policies and they work on behalf of our clients. So if somebody has a claim, they call us and we put them right in touch with claims people who then work with the claims folks at the insurance company side to make sure your claim is handled adequately and appropriately. Agents have a lot of risk management resources. We have great databases of information we can pull on. I mean, it's really specialized. I work with a landscaper, for instance, a landscape contractor, and I was able to pull all sorts of just workers' comp information specific for landscape contractors. I mean, our database is tremendous and really helpful. I think it can provide some really good information when you're developing your risk profile. I think I talked a little bit about the best terms and pricing in the market. That's really important. When you go to like a State Farm, you're not getting the best price in the market necessarily. You're just getting whatever State Farm, for instance, I mean, not picking on State Farm, whatever they have to offer. But when you go with an agent, they have access to many insurance companies in the market, and they're going to pull you some different options to consider. And insurance companies are rated. Some are better than others. And most agents like Frost, the big agencies, are only going to work with what we call A-rated insurance companies that we know financially are going to be around when you have a claim, and they have a history of actually paying claims. So that matters. You don't want to get a no-name policy. And your insurance agent can be an important business partner. It's nice to have connections in the business world and meet other people. It's always a nice thing to do, and be in relationship and have somebody to call when you have questions. Again, I think you all understand being daring. Anybody who's gone out on a limb as a woman and made herself her own business, I admire you. And I think it's amazing that you took the risk, and I'm proud of you and applaud you for doing it. So really that's about it. I know a little bit about insurance, but what I really know for certain is that these are really hard times, and everybody's struggling, and everybody has heavy hearts for different reasons, and holidays can be really hard, but there's always something to be thankful for. And I come back to that every day with hoping to have a heart of gratitude. And I certainly do today to meet you all, and would love to hear from you. Shoot me a text or look for me on LinkedIn. I'm around. It's good to know everybody. And thank you for bearing with me on a holiday Thursday night and talking about insurance. We made it.
You did it, Amy, in record speed.
I told you. I mean, we can cover a lot of stuff, just really high level. I'm happy to drill down on it with anybody who wants to know more about any of those fun topics.
All right. Well, we're going to get with Donna Lisa to see if she's received. I think she has some questions.
All right.
So you want to unshare your screen?
Oh.
It will all pop back up again.
Yeah, we don't need to see that all day.
Yeah. Awesome. So our first question was from Kelly. Do you need property insurance if you're working out of your home?
You should probably have some kind of commercial insurance if you're working out of your home. I would recommend at least what's called a small business owner's package policy, and that would give you some liability coverage. And if you do have some property, maybe your home is insured by your family, but you might have a computer or inventory, any kind of business property that you might have, you can also cover under that small, what's called a BOP policy, a business owner's protective policy. It's a little package policy. They're very, very affordable, and it would very much protect your personal assets in the event that you have some kind of business loss.
So Amy, they're an interesting, so Kelly is here in Texas, but her partner is in New Mexico. So what about that with the two different states? Do they both need to have?
No, I would just purchase one policy under the company name, and that would give liability coverage anywhere in the United States. And then you could add 2 different locations to the property piece of that policy, which would be a good idea. So you could put a little bit of coverage at your house, Kelly, and a little bit in New Mexico. And you can always adjust those limits as you grow your business and you move forward. But one policy, 2 locations.
Did that cover you, Kelly? Was that everything? Great. Jamila, she was going to pop on because she does a lot of digital stuff. So you want to pop on?
Yeah, Amy, I was wondering, so like my business is completely virtual, but we work with clients' financial data and just data in general. And so my question is, what types of insurance, like if you were going to give me like the top 2 or 3 that I should absolutely have, like what would those ones be?
I'd want to know more about what you're doing with that data to really answer that question. But right off the bat, I can tell you need cyber coverage, because if something happens and that data is harmed in any way or somehow gets in the wrong hands, it's really nice that you would have cyber insurance. The other thing that we would talk about to see if there's a need for would be professional liability, that if in your contract, if you don't uphold your end of the deal, if your client is actually going to lose money, if there's a financial injury to your client, if you fail to perform your end of the contract, then professional liability would come into play. So hopefully that's helpful. You're welcome to buzz me. We can talk it out.
Yeah, I already sent you a message.
Oh, awesome. Awesome.
Okay, so Patty wanted to know, what is director and officer insurance?
Directors and officers actually covers the directors and the officers of the business if you're sued in your name. So if I'm the director of my kid's school, and I'm on the board of directors, then I'm going to want to make sure that the school has directors and officers insurance that's going to cover me. So if I make a decision on behalf of the school and somebody doesn't like it and they're going to come after me and the school, then I want the school to pay for that. So it's not always essential for small businesses, but it's just something to consider for any officers of the company if you feel like that there's an exposure for them to be personally sued.
Okay. And Valerie, do you want to pop on? I'm not sure if that's a question or if you wanted some clarification.
Yes. Hello, everybody. I've run a nonprofit organization for quite a while. A lot of years we were dormant, but since we've been up and running here recently, we got an SBA loan for the pandemic. And now they're requiring a hazardous insurance to cover our assets, and I assume the loan. Are you familiar with the requirements?
I'd have to look at those individual requirements. Frost Insurance, where I work, I actually sit with all the bankers of Frost Bank, and I know all about those SBA and PPP loans, and we've had to fund lots of them on insurance. But it's probably a property and liability package policy they're requiring just to make sure that you have insurance in place for your assets.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Happy to take a look at it though.
Okay, I'll be getting in touch with you.
All right.
So what about somebody that uses their personal vehicle for work? Do they need additional coverage for that, Amy?
That's a tough one. It's just a sole proprietor, just one person using their automobile for business purposes, but the car is owned in the person's name, not the business name.
Yeah, let's look at maybe a Mary Kay consultant or somebody that maybe, they have their own business and they use their vehicle to run.
Right.
Yeah.
That is something that I would ask your personal agent about to see if there's a possibility to put it in. The cheapest way to do it is to put some sort of endorsement possibly on your personal auto insurance policy.
Okay.
Is probably the most affordable way to do that. If it's possible, if not, then you might want to take out a little commercial policy.
Okay. And then I think probably a lot of us are really curious a lot of businesses didn't have coverage for the pandemic.
Right.
So what specific insurance would you recommend for this such situations?
The standard answer is there was no insurance for the pandemic. What businesses thought would happen is they had to close their doors, and so that business interruption insurance should have kicked in, and that's what we talked about on that long property slide that everybody enjoyed so much. We talked about business income insurance, but it did not kick in, because for business income insurance to kick in, you actually have to have physical damage to the location first. In the pandemic, the bacteria, I mean, people tried to get around it every which way. Nobody considered it actual physical damage. So there really was no way to plan for that. And as far as I know, there still is not. Some insurance companies are actually adding even more exclusions to their policies. So if you have to shut your doors and you can't work, if you're the hairdressers and restaurants that shut their doors, they really struggled because insurance did not pay out on that. And it was not intended to pay out on that, frankly. That was just something that they never planned on. They would consider it what's called a business risk. And folks had to figure out a way around that. And it's really tough. It was really tough.
Wow. So how do you handle like virtual employees, Amy? Like if you've got virtual assistant, or maybe you have, people that aren't in your location, or they're remote. How do you handle insurance and stuff for them?
Just the same exact way as you would if they were in your office. Workers' comp would actually cover a claim. I'm a full-time employee of Frost, and I'm working I'm grateful that I get to work completely virtually. But if actually I went to a seminar on this last week and found it really interesting. My workers' comp that I have coverage for, that Frost pays for me to have if I'm injured, still applies, even though I'm not on my job site, my office downtown. I'm at home. I'm a virtual employee. They don't need to add anything to the policy. The policy is going to apply. And even if I'm here sitting at my desk and somehow slip and fall and hit my head, and now I'm out of work for months and I've got to have surgery, workers' comp insurance should pay for that.
Wow. So do we have any more questions? That was all I had written down. Anybody? Tracy's back over to you.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Amy. That was a lot of great information.
You're welcome. It was fun to be here.
A lot of it, almost overwhelming.
Oh, I'm
many
sorry.
different types of insurance.
It's a lot. I know. Insurance is like, there's so much to it. That's why it's fun. That's why it's so much fun.
So we really appreciate you being here. Thank you. Want to let everyone know what we have coming up. Our next small business workshop is going to be Drastic Steps Marketing, Get Known, Get Connected, Get Paid, and that is next Tuesday, and that will be our last one in this series. For all the grant winners, you had to watch all of these and complete a business plan and send the receipts for the first 2,500, which hopefully should be going. It's in process right now, so I'm not sure exactly when that's going out, but that's what you'll need to submit to get to your second half of the grant funding. We also have in December, our Women Rise is going to be Tuesday, December 8th. It's going to be long-term financial changes and future-facing strategies. Get ready to set goals for the new year. So we have that coming up. And then a fireside chat with corny dog heiress Amber Fletcher's going to be on Thursday, December 10th from 5:30 to 7. And we're going to learn about how Amber Fletcher, corny dog heiress, marketing and event operations, how they had to pivot their business during this crazy year. So that's everything that we have coming up.
I know, no state fair, no corny dogs.
That's right. That's what I said. Some people make all their money in 1 month
right.
of the year. So that was a lot of pivoting there. So we're really looking forward to that. Thank you, everyone, for being here. We wish all of you a very happy and safe Thanksgiving.
Yes.
And we look forward to seeing you next week.
Y'all are awesome. Congratulations, everybody. Good
Thank
job. Keep up,
Thanks.
women. Keep it going.